I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we've reached the 4 o'clock hour. It is Tuesday, February 20th, and we are bringing our meeting of the Del Solid Waste Management Authority to order. Kara, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Here.
Commissioner Inscore?
Here.
Chair Short?
I am here. Would you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this time is our public comment period. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes to make their comment. Is there any public comment?
You gotta sit down. Can you sit? No, you have to sit. Sit. Good. Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, I keep trying to get the county to change the ordinance for the cannabis. All the ones in the city, that they don't go through annual hearings, but I would have to do it in the county. And I always feared I would have to throw away all of my weed, which is what you have to do if your license expires. And I did in protest because I was the only one who collected a tax. And it was a lot of weed and a lot of packaging. And anybody who does go forward in this business is not going to want that annual idea that, because their planning commission's prohibitive against this business. And so you have to hope you get 3 votes. And so every year you'd hope you get 3 votes. And you'd start dwindling your inventory down, not ordering, because you weren't sure if you were going to be in business. And I've always been voted, the highest tax, and Supervisor Wilson's sister's husband owns a pot dispensary. He won't recuse himself of it. And so, but in any case, I'd hope you guys would advise the county to change the ordinance so that people who do go into the cannabis business outside the city limits, outside Supervisor Wilson's brother-in-law's jurisdiction when he was an employee there, and made himself a really nice ordinance. If you just change it so they don't have to go through annual hearings once a year. So if you advise that to the supervisors, I'm still going to get in trouble if I sell to a minor or something. There never was an issue. But I should just go to the state. Anybody who's in the cannabis business should go directly to the state, so that they don't risk. Because it was about $20,000 worth of product. I usually have about $70,000 worth of product on hand, but I always wind it down, which isn't good for business anyways. And it was really bad for the environment because the little cartridges all have little tubes, like little straws inside little pouches. I know it's my own, it's really kind of a personal issue that I'm taking up with any board that's of relevance to it. But I've asked Darren, and I've asked Dean, and I've asked every supervisor to change this ordinance. And because I'm the only one who's been licensed by this ordinance, they've refused to. And but I'd like this board to suggest to the supervisors to change the cannabis ordinance so that once you get through the county, you don't go through the county again unless somebody catches you selling to a minor or you've otherwise been violating something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I get your name, please?
Robert.
Thank you.
And we don't have anybody online? Or are we taking? Woo-hoo. we'll close the public comment period and move on to our consent agenda. We have 3 items. Item 1.1 is approve the minutes from the regular session of Tuesday, the 16th of January of this year. Hello, Jason. 1.2, approve payment of claim number 9742 to CalPERS in the amount of $70,000 for OPEB obligations. And 1.3, approve the budget transfer for fiscal year 23-24 in the amount of $25,550.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to
Second.
approve the consent and a second from Mr. Tompkins. Is there any public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any discussion? Seeing none, Carol, will you pull the vote?
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno,
Yes.
Chair Short.
Yes. Okay, number 2, director's reports. Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Chair Short. So I'll summarize the activities on this agenda plus a couple other things that have happened. Unfortunately, because of the slide on Klamath Beach Road, the Klamath Transfer Station was not open on either February 11th or the 14th. Thankfully, we were able to open on Sunday. There was a small amount of trash left at the gate, but we were able to get that cleaned up. So happy about that. And we're hoping again to be open on Wednesday. And we're grateful to the Klamath community for their understanding that when we can't get down there, it's hard for us to open our facilities. But we recognize that that's a frustration for everybody who lives down there and was expecting them to be open. We do take our open hours very seriously, and we do what we can to try to fulfill those to the best of our abilities. Apart from that, our facilities were open. We have our regular Rethinking Recycling program coming up on Thursday. We'll be talking about reuse and repair and refilling. And we did attend the Truth North and Redwood Regions RISE meeting on February 8th. And we're working with the Redwood Parks Conservancy and the Smith River Alliance on a cleanup they're organizing for Saturday the 24th. Some bit of good news, our $150,000 grant application to Cal Recycle for SB 1383 was approved. We just got that word today, so we'll have more information about that at upcoming meetings. Looking on, we were able to mail out the request for proposals for the 5-year permit review for the Crescent City landfill, and we're hoping to have responses evaluated and ready for your approval at the next meeting. Agenda item 3.1 was a request to use the landfill property as part of a Frisbee golf fundraising event. And before this meeting, they did send me an email saying they were rescinding that request. We can still do a brief discussion of that if you'd like, but they are pulling back that request. Unfortunately, last meeting, while the board, I'm very grateful, did vote to support SB 560, that was a producer responsibility bill for single-use propane containers, but there has been while that bill did not make it out of committee, there's now a new bill that actually is looking to ban single-use propane containers. So as it was the week for introducing legislation, there was a small tsunami of legislation that was introduced this last week. So I'll wait until next meeting to try to give you summaries and say which bills we should weigh in on. Probably the best news, though, and we'll talk a little bit more about this under item 6.3, but in working with John Kennedy of the Rural Counties ESJPA, he specifically asked that we make a plea to Assemblymember Wood that that he introduce a bill to address our concerns about rural communities in SB 1383, and thankfully he agreed to do that. So AB 2902 is that bill, and we'll talk a little bit further about that. I also should let you know that we did have the first meeting of the SB 54 advisory group, and they are planning on monthly meetings moving forward. So I'll be going to Sacramento or attending online in the coming months. Also, Daphne Cortez Lambert and myself were accepted to make a presentation at the Alameda County's 4th Annual Illegal Dumping Conference on the 2nd and 3rd of May. So I wanted to make sure to incorporate Daphne because I think Del Norte Mission Possible is really one of the more innovative programs that Del Norte County has to try to address illegal dumping and blight on the landscape. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I can move on to the financial reports.
Yes, I wanted to say a couple things. First, I don't know how effective it is, but I do appreciate that you post things like closures on Facebook, and so I'm happy to share them. I have no idea how effective that might be, but I think it's a good idea, and we should be trying every method. The second one's, I read a quick blurb somewhere in one of the little letters I get that the director of Cal Recycle had stepped down and we have a new one. Is that going to affect things in any way?
Excellent point on both of those. First of all, I need to deflect the praise for updating our Facebook because that is all Kira.
Of course. I should have known it. Yeah.
And part of our coordinated efforts, we're regularly in contact in situations like when the Klamath transfer station is closed because we all care about that. So in that case, I got the word out to the radio stations and Kira got the word out to Facebook. So I sure appreciate that partnership. And you're absolutely right. And I meant to mention that Rachel Mackey-Wagner has announced her retirement as director of Cal Recycle effective March 5th. One of the bills that has been introduced is actually a bill to reinstate a board at Cal Recycle. They used to have a board for some time, and then that was replaced by a single director. And I believe Rachel Mackey-Wagner is the second or third single director that they've had since that time. But it's an ongoing challenge and widely recognized that it's very hard to have a single person in charge of such a large agency who's both the face and the avenue for people to register concerns and complaints. That's just too big of a job for a single person. And so there's this bill been introduced. We'll see how it moves moving forward, but let's just say the implications are that because she doesn't have another job lined up, she was convinced that it would be the right thing to step down at this point. So you can read that as you will.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions or comments, we'll go on to the financials if you'd like. Mr.
Okay.
Webb.
You do have some handouts to flesh out some of the financials, as not all of those reports were ready at the time that we were publishing the agenda. But looking at our balance sheet, we've got a little over $2 million in the bank plus $198,000 for last month's rent. Looking at claims approved by director, you'll see the largest payment goes to Hamburger WSG for the good services they provide at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. Second largest expense was the second payment to the Del Norte County Auditor for the sublease for the transfer station. And the third largest was payment for the debit and credit machine. And the fourth largest payment was an interfund transfer to pay for our IT services and audit services and things like that through the county. So attached to your report in the handouts are our monthly financials. January, our revenue was up just a little bit, and we are approximately 70,000 or 75,000 ahead of monthly projection, ahead of our budget at this point in time. So our finances are generally looking pretty good. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Director Ward, on the aging summary.
Yeah.
On page 2, are those debit numbers there, large numbers, are those the adjustments after the Recology got their stuff back in and were able to evaluate the actual
That is
costs?
exactly right. That's exactly right. We did make those adjustments, and as I had discussed before, they were giving us estimated payments that were higher than anybody expected, so we anticipated we would have to give some of that money back, and we've
Very
done
good.
that.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Oh, seeing no others, we can continue on, Mr. Ward.
Okay. So item 3.1 is that conversation with the Frisbee Golf Club, and you can see my detailed response. In short, it's a public property. We like to make public properties available for public uses where that fits. But the first and foremost function of that public property is as a landfill. And so we need to, that's our first priority, is make sure that we're maintaining all of our permit conditions. And so some of the things that they asked to do, like have one of their things where they can throw the Frisbee over a pond, or another one where they're throwing it from the landfill mound. Those are areas that we really can't encourage people to do that kind of activity. I'm not opposed to having groups go out to the landfill, but it really needs to be in the kind of circumstance where they're not, in essence, invited to do the same thing at a later date in a way that will cause problems. And so I didn't see a good way forward on this. I'm willing to discuss it if we have a little bit more notice, but given the amount of time, the specifics of the requests, it just didn't seem like a good fit. I do appreciate their creative thinking about how they might be able to use landscape for some public benefit, and I do appreciate that. But I think in order, somewhat like if the Frisbee Golf Group decided the airport might be a good place for such an event. Similarly, you got to have the airport function first in mind as you're figuring out how the Frisbee golf thing might work, right? So the same thing applies for us. We need to make sure that the landfill is maintained as a landfill without any additional security issues. And so the best way to do that at this point was to say, not this way, not this time.
Very good. Any
Yeah,
questions?
I
Go
guess
ahead.
the first thing that came to mind when I read this is liability. I mean, the property is kind of rough. Lots of hills, lots of places people could fall.
Yep.
I don't think, do we have any insurance that would cover something like that, or we'd probably require the group to come up with an insurance?
Yeah, they would have to have
but,
insurance, and in the, previously when we've had work groups go out there, they've all had to sign liability waivers, and even so, because they were doing work on our behalf, they were covered kind of under workers' comp, under our insurance. But yeah, this is a very different activity, and we haven't had this kind of request for use of the landfill property before. So I'm not opposed to doing the work. Just it needs to come at a time that we can actually address it.
All right, thanks.
Sure. No, I think it was a timely and thought out response, and I guess we can move on, being they have withdrawn their request. Doing so, we're going to move down to item 6.1, discussion and possible actions regarding the election of authority officers for 2024. Of course, we traditionally switch members of the chairmanship and the vice chairmanship between the city and the county. That's, of course, not set in stone, but it is traditionally done. So I will, at this time, open nominations for the chairman at this time. What happens if we don't get any nominations for chairman? Like, I've never encountered this before.
I nominate Chairman Inscore.
We have a nomination for Mr. Inscore for the chairmanship. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further nominations? Seeing none, I'll close nominations. And all in favor, say aye. Obviously, nobody opposed. We have a motion and a second for Mr. Wilson for vice chair. Is there any, or all in favor, say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Inscore? I don't, I don't even know why I took the nominations for vice chair, but because you're the boss now.
So our secretary, if Commissioner Tompkins is willing to continue in that role, I would certainly.
It's a hard job, but my signature
You're
is
still able to sign your
gradually
name.
eroding, but
Yeah, well, that's.
I'm hanging in there,
Why
so
not by
I'm
me?
willing.
Well, maybe we have
I will definitely vote.
we have-
Aye.
You make that nomination?
I'll make that nomination.
I'll second
All
that.
right. Any others? Any public comment? All right, all in favor of Mike continuing as our secretary?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
And for treasurer,
Chair Short, there's a public comment request.
I'm not chair short anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I am. Is that it? Okay, thank you.
We have a
And,
treasurer as
and,
well.
and, yeah, do we need to take an actual action to keep Mr. Taylor as our treasurer controller?
I think it would be cleanest to take
I
that
would
action.
move that we keep Mr. Taylor as our treasurer controller.
I would second that.
All right, any public comment on that? All right, Richard Taylor? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, what do we have left? 6.2.
This is an annual actuarial valuation that we need to do, and we've been using McLeod Watts for the last several years. They can do this for $5,700, and staff recommend approval.
Okay, any questions about doing the OPEB evaluation?
Move to approve.
And I'll second.
A motion, a second, any public comment? All right, Kara, would you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Tompkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Short?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Chair and Score?
Yes. Okay, 6.3, the letter that, or you already mentioned to us, Assemblymember Wood's willingness.
And the board just did a great job in this throughout. You may not feel like it, but by approving the guiding principles, by approving the letter regarding the Little Hoover Commission, you made it really easy for us to be able to be supportive of what the Rural Counties ESJPA is trying to do, which is to support our efforts to try to get these rural exemptions, essentially to make SB 1383 work for our rural community so that we're not arguing about stuff that makes no sense. Thank you for that. I believe the bill number is going to be AB 2902, but because the bill was just introduced, it'll be part of the legislative discussion at the next meeting. But almost certainly we would want to recommend support for that, but I anticipate that at the next meeting, and it probably won't move really quickly before then.
Okay. Maybe a suggestion would be to, in the interim, for us to craft a very simple appreciation letter to Assemblymember Wood for his willingness to take this up, just as a kind of a follow-up thing. I'd certainly be happy to sign that if we could do so.
I'd be happy to do that. I think that's very appropriate. At this point, it looks like Wood is the sponsor of the bill.
Okay, 6.4, Amendment 2 to the employment agreement with our director.
This is essentially ratification of the action the board took last meeting, and it was really just to make it really clear for the HR department so that it's in writing and that they have a salary schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a comment on that.
All right,
In our county salary schedule, our pay rates go from A to E, and then the longevity steps start at F, G, and H. So in the report for 6.4, it says that the annual salary will be increased from the 3701 at the bottom of the pay scale to 4924. The issue I have with that is that it is specific to Mr. Ward's position now because he has so much longevity. But the topped out part of his pay scale is actually 4254.27, which would be the E step. He has the longevity steps coming to him, which puts his pay rate at 4924.85. But if we are to keep in step with the county's pay scale, the top step of that position would be the E step, which would be the 4254.27. So it's my belief that that needs to be adjusted in the report, so it is crystal clear to HR, because there effectively is no top step of 4924.85. It only applies to Mr. Ward because he's been with the authority for so long and has achieved those longevity steps.
Okay, so then we can rewrite this with the salary being defined in this case. And this, I guess because this is his employment agreement, this is not necessarily a policy for the authority itself, like in an operations manual. This is just in his actual contract. But I don't see any reason why we couldn't rewrite that paragraph to identify E and then include another sentence that identifies each of those steps, which equal to a current salary as of whatever of that number. But that would be, I think that where it really would matter is if somebody was to look at this employment agreement in looking at whoever the next director was and saying, okay, the top down is 4924. No, it's not. It's E, and then there's this, because we're using the county scale. So
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
good catch.
It's my understanding we're kind of creating that range A9.
Yes.
So I wanted to be, very clear about the scale of that, and that it's not from, up to you don't top out at 4924.85. You actually top out at 4254.27. But then when you get your longevity steps, then it goes up from there. And like I say, that's just the way currently the county runs their pay ranges. So I would suggest that we just mirror that in that pay range 8-9. Have any concerns, Mr. Ward?
Well, I did share this draft amendment with county HR, and unfortunately, Kathy Hafterson is out, so Whitney Pincombe was reviewing it, and I didn't get word back from her one way or the other. I'm certainly willing to craft this in a way that makes sense for the county, so long as the bottom line doesn't change. I think the words are very negotiable.
Yeah, bottom line doesn't change, and they are stretched extremely thin in HR right now.
Right. And then the other thing that's worth mentioning is that paragraph that describes longevity below and under salary is already part of my agreement.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not wishing to change the numbers, just in the way that we formulate the range.
So that's fine. And the objective here is clarity. So long as we can come to an agreement of the wording of the amendment, I guess I'll look to legal counsel as to what action we should be
Because I mean,
taking
as it looks now, say we hired Ted today, 6 months down the road, you are eligible for step B. A year after that, you're eligible for step C, and then a year D, a year E, a year later F, a year. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in 6, 7 years, you could reach your top step, and which would appear to be $4,924, which is not correct.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I was not aware of the county structure. I did not realize that G and H were longevity steps. I assumed that they were simple steps.
yeah, F, G, and H, yes.
F, G, and H.
Yeah, and my confusion is that, yeah, I acknowledge those are longevity steps, but because I was already in them,
Sure.
it was hard for me to say they didn't exist.
Completely understand. Yeah, yeah, no problem.
I would concur with Commissioner Short that especially since we created the A9 category, that we reference the A9 category based on how the county does it, and then identify that Director Ward has met the longevity steps of F, G, and H, which places his current salary at that number. I didn't know that those were longevity steps. I assume it was just part of the.
And we
step.
have been trying to, through each bargaining unit, divorce those longevity steps out of those pay ranges. We're just currently successful with the sheriff's office in doing that. So we hope to do that with the other bargaining groups. It is a bargaining process, so it's slow going, but we're working toward divorcing those longevity steps out of the pay ranges.
So,
it's
so
more
I,
clear.
I think I have a suggestion about a motion you could make to affect the actions you're trying to
Before we do
Go ahead.
that, if I'm not mistaken, and I know that it was late as far as getting back here and we had another meeting. I didn't think we were, because the county was currently doing just that. I don't remember us putting in the longevity piece at this point in time as it states here.
And like I said, that may have been my confusion about where you wanted the longevity steps to be and how you wanted them indicated. So I think what the intent is here, to direct staff to work with county HR to craft a contract amendment that enacts the action the board took last meeting,
Yeah.
right? And because that's really the intent. And we don't have the language before us now.
I
And-
think that simple direction is fine for you to do that. I don't think we need to take any action on this, but if you hear that and can work with HR and with Mr. Black to come back with something that reflects the county's process and scale, as well as the intent of our action from last month.
Okay.
Because if I remember correctly, we did not say we were willing to do anything with the longevity because of the fact that we were told that the county is working currently on that. That was my understanding.
Also my understanding that essentially you did not want to reflect the longevity on the pay scale because because that was still an object of negotiation. But as I said in my agreement, I do have ways that longevity is addressed, and it is affecting my current pay scale. And so we want to reflect that. Bob, do you have anything to add here?
No, I'm a little confused about what the county folks are talking about when you say you're trying to divorce the longevity from the pay scale.
So the F, G, and H
Yes.
piece, just split that off basically. So your pay scale is going to be from A to E,
Yes,
and then your longevity comes into effect at whatever year is bargained. Let's say 15 years. At the 15 year, you'll get whatever percentage is bargained. But it's usually like 5%.
yeah,
So that would be what is now reflected as pay scale F. So it shouldn't be part of your pay scale so as not to have the confusion of I get paid from here to there. No, you don't get paid from here, from A to F or A to E. That is your base pay.
yeah. I think
And
that
your
makes a lot
your
more sense.
longevity starts at a percentage after so many years of service, rather than one of those pay ranges. That's all I'm trying to say. Is we're doing our best to get that piece split off of our pay ranges.
So the scale that you have in front of you applicable to TED wouldn't change those numbers. It would not change those numbers if you went to a straight percentage calculation.
Correct.
And so, as I understand it, Ted is coming in at E step plus the percentages that take him to his longevity plateau. Right.
Yes. That is what we're trying to get accomplished
So let's see
through the
what
county.
HR says about it. To me, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
It's the same argument, it's just.
Well, with the exception of those pay raises that you're awarded upon satisfactory evaluation every year. If you have pay steps A through H, then with those additional years and satisfactory evaluations, it appears that you are up for another 5% pay raise after E.
Is that,
At the county, that is not correct.
that's not how you understand it, right? No.
That's the way it's written in the report. So, because we have it, from 3701 to 4924 biweekly. So that is specific to Mr. Ward. I would like to make it generic for the position.
So the part about that I'm a little unclear as to how to get from here to there is I don't know how the county regards this concept of creating this new range special for this position. Are they just thinking of that as this is just Mr. Ward for the time being? But it seems to me that when he leaves, you're going to be hiring at A, B, or C step, depending on qualifications, et cetera, and ratcheting the longevity back to either 0, or if it's already a county employee, maybe not, maybe something with longevity built in. So it would seem to me that the motion could be, I think this is what Ted was stating, is that you move to approve the contract amendment as provided in 6.4 is whatever it is, with the approval and any technical requirements of county HR and or authority council, something like that. And so that enables us to just kind of tweak it. You're passing it in principle, understanding the money flow part of it, but in order to fit reasonably within the county system, we will make any technical changes that are required. It's not 100% clear to me that.
Yeah, I think you're making it a little more complicated than what he's asking for.
Okay.
Because all he's asking for is a clarification that the top available step for his position is E. But because he has been in longevity, for this period of time, he qualifies for H, which is the 49. And I think that's all we're asking for, is just having that specified so that someone who's looking at the wage doesn't believe that, that these F to H steps are part of the regular pay scale. It is only because of the longevity that exists there. And that's the only thing that Darren's asking for, is just a specific clarification in that, so that the public, when they're reading it, doesn't just assume that, that anybody coming into the job could, be given this H range.
Yeah, and I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I'm not sure what, I don't know what was discussed, but I believe that our intent is to mirror the county's pay structure. So, I guess I could say I would make the motion that we accept this amendment with a caveat that we allow county HR and authority staff to mirror the county's pay structure to the best of their ability and adjust the base pay rate as applicable. Okay.
Do we have to approve this for you to get this pay? Is that why this is?
My view is this has already been approved, but I have not moved any of the paperwork because I wanted to make sure that it was really clear.
Oh.
But the effective date is the day after the last meeting.
Right.
I mean, that's, for me, and if that's your motion, it's your motion. I like having stuff cleaned up. I don't like to approve something and then say, go back and fix it. If it was timely and you felt like, well, I need to get my paycheck, then that's different. But other than that, I'd like to see what we're approving. Because I think there's going to be substantial changes. I mean, the second paragraph, I'm still concerned about this longevity, because when you look at this statement here about it being effective June 16th, 2015, that means that if it's 5 years, that means in 2025, then you would be eligible for another 5%. Given how big this has already been adjusted, I'm not sure that's appropriate. That's why I felt like at our last discussion, we weren't going to do anything with longevity at this point in time. Now, if that requires changing something within your contract, then I think that needs to be clear before we do, because if you just look at this from this standpoint, then in 25, there would be eligible for another 5% increase. And I'm not sure that that's what the board was looking at.
Well, that is my reality. And I was hired in 1994, and so in August 2024, I will have worked for this agency 30 years.
I was
Is that the age?
somehow under the impression that HR had taken, had given some kind of direction that they needed something on paper. So just simply for the way it was worded, I'm going to withdraw my motion. Not that I'm disagreeable to this, but I'm going to withdraw that so we can
And
continue
if
on.
we need to, if the question about longevity requires, if this becomes a decision that clearly there's not clarity that we need to put back on the closed session agenda to talk about, then so be it. But
So can I clarify your concern? Your concern is that he's paid at the H level. He serves another 5 years, or he serves until some date in 2025, and that gives him another 5%. But there's no way you'd have to create an I level in order for that to happen. That's and I worked for the county. I was the county council for 9 years. And so and my wife worked for 15 years at First Five. And so she actually got, I think, one of these early slots. And I always understood when you're at H,
That's it.
That's it. You're topped out.
Mhm.
Just like when you're at E and you're only in the 6th year of your employment, you're
Yeah.
topped out for like 9 years
That's
until
true.
you get to 15 or something like that.
that's what I don't think is clear in what's written here. What's written
Okay.
here implies that in 2025, there would be another 5%.
It's
And
true.
and if that, I don't want this board to come back. I likely will not be here in 2025, and people go, what do you mean there's another 5%? We just did this. It would just be better if we got this solved before we approved something. My opinion, because that was my thought too, that when you hit whatever that is, there is a end of life time of a salary schedule,
yeah.
and they could only be adjusted then by
Yeah.
cost of living as
And
appropriate.
I think that's what everybody at the county has always lived with. That's, so I don't think conceptually there's a problem. We just need to get it into language maybe. But
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is that it took too long to address this, and so, but as long as it's taken to address this, I think we can go one more meeting to get it right. That would be my guidance. But
So at the next meeting, we would be saying that our salary would be from 3701 biweekly to the 425427, which would be the E step, correct?
Correct.
And then on the longevity increases of 5%, they would be at what years? 15, 20, and 25, which would be the F, G, and H. Is that what we're agreeing to?
Well, that needs to be, that, it needs to be congruent with how the county's doing it. And can I say what that is as we sit here today? I can't. How exactly the county's doing it.
I can't either.
And I
Ted might know.
I, at this point in the discussion, we're introducing several things that were not part of the discussion in closed session. And I'm a little concerned about that. Not the least of which is essentially I've had in my agreement this longevity clause that's always been there. And now in this open session, you're saying longevity stops. That's new. That's
No,
hasn't been negotiated.
I'm not saying it stops. I'm questioning is if we're trying to mirror the county, and if we say we're mirroring the county, and we put that in this language, right? If we put that in this language that we're mirroring the county, and the county stops, and your understanding is that it does not, then we have a conflict there, and I just think that we need to make sure that we get this right before we agree to something that I think that there's two things here. I'm not saying it's one way or the other. We weren't clear on this when we came out of closed session about this longevity thing, and having not seen this amendment, obviously, because it hadn't been written yet, I just think we should get this right. And if we need to go back into closed session, then I'm fine with that.
I'm sure we.
It sounds like we need to go back
Yeah.
to closed session and have this
Bring it back to
discussion.
closed session next meeting.
Yeah, because
Is it
that's
our-
something that we didn't hammer out.
All right
Fair
then.
enough.
Yeah.
The effective date will still be the same.
Yes, yes.
And
it will be
I
retroactive.
have every confidence we will be able to work out these details, and I'm
Certainly.
not concerned about the delay.
And I have no problem with moving forward with I have heard nothing that implies that there's any desire to not make this an effective pay date. If it would, pending the approval of this amendment, if it's appropriate for us to take action to ratify that based only on this, that you get paid, I'm totally fine with that we can make a motion to move forward with the already approved on pay scale, with the understanding that we will address the other concerns, because I don't hear any concerns about the actual pay. It's about the language in the amendment.
Okay.
Do you think that within what was agendized that we can do that, Bob?
I want to make sure the board is comfortable, and there's been mention of the possible need to go into closed session, which we can't really we can't do today because it's not agendized. So, you know, I believe that it's going to be easy to work out the language. It's just that this is an issue that catches me a little bit off guard, and so I'm not prepared to do it on the spot as we sit here. So my feeling is affirm the effective date, so the money is neutral. But let's work it out, as Chairman is saying, through another closed session and then a further action at the next meeting.
Okay.
I think it's going to go very smoothly, but
Okay.
I think we should do it right. So,
Director Ward, you're all right with that?
I am. Thank you, sir.
Okay, very good. We will take this up and appropriately at our next meeting.
Sorry to throw that wrench into the gearworks, but yeah, let's.
Fill out your Form 700 and sign your ethics policy form, or you're fired.
Get her done by March 11th? Is that the deadline? March
April 11th.
April 11th?
April.
April 11th. Okay.
The Form 700s are due before the 1st of April.
Oh,
Really?
before the 1st of April. Okay.
Oh.
I thought it was the 11th, but okay. Thanks
All right.
thanks for
Very good.
keeping us
Would have been late.
going down the road.
No.
Keep her between the ditches, right?
And sign your I will behave myself contract.
So we have to fill one out for the authority as well as our other
Yes.
governing board?
Yes.
Yeah, so the interesting thing for council members is the jurisdiction of the authority is the whole county. So you can't just piggyback your council Form 700. You have to, and it may not change anything, but you have to recognize that this is the whole county jurisdiction.
Is this a change that
No,
took effect recently? Because I
Not-
don't
not
remember
since I've been
filling
around.
one out in the past.
Yeah, I
for the
didn't.
authority
I
report.
put it on my Form 700 as an additional for years. I don't know that I've ever filed a second, an actual second Form 700, but because they have places for other boards and commissions.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
you just, is
But
just
if-
a copy of that coming to them sufficient, or
But
do
if
you
own
want?
a rental property in Smith River and you're serving on the city council,
Uh-huh.
if you're not on another jurisdictional body that has countywide jurisdiction, you don't necessarily have to list that. Because it's not in your city council purview.
Yeah.
Right? But, and my suspicion is most council members are probably not going to have outside of city council jurisdiction things to report.
Yeah. That's
but
probably why it's never been an issue, because I've never had anything to report.
Yeah.
I've just listed it as an additional board or commission. And
There's
then- So would you prefer that we file an actual separate Form
No.
700 just for this?
No.
So does,
What you can do is on your, I'm sorry to interrupt.
just a question. So does that mean somebody who's on the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority or LAFCO would also have to be required to post another additional 700 form?
Actually, it's
Yeah.
funny that you,
For
that you
all the
mentioned the,
different, boards that you're on?
No,
Like-
there's
like,
on the first page of the Form 700, there's a box you can check
Okay,
that basically says, see the attached list of governing
Mhm.
bodies that I serve on.
oh,
And you have to make sure that your reportage of reportable things
okay,
covers the biggest jurisdiction available.
Hmm.
And then you file, since you're primarily, or your entree into this is as a council member, I would file the original with the city clerk. And then you can file copies with Kara. And each one would be identical. All the different things you serve on, you'd file the same form with an attached list.
okay.
I will say their online filing portal has made it a little bit more challenging, because where you used to be able to get the form and it had that box,
Yeah,
I don't think that specific box exists in the online portal in the same way. So it's a little bit more complicated. But again, if you have nothing to report, it's a lot easier. You just left to list the names.
you may be more up to date than I am then, because if I'm wrong about that, that may mean that you have to
Yeah.
do a little different filing procedure.
Okay. Anything else? Good to the order? Carrie, do you have stuff for us to sign? All right, we will stand adjourned until our next meeting, and thank you so much, everybody. Good work.